G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to go through a quick video, if I can make it quick, to go through a comment that I get raised in various forms, but that's a little bit along the lines of how far out is a bullet dangerous? A little bit how far out will a bullet kill? People say that sort of stuff, but it's really about the danger factor of a bullet when it's traveling through the air. How far out is it? And listen, my fundamental comment on it, the comment I've always gone with, is if a bullet's still traveling through the air, it's still lethal. Not effective, not should be used at that place, but it still should be considered lethal. It could still kill whatever it hits. Could. So let me explain that a little bit. I think there's a couple of misconceptions that go with the bullet. First of all, the speed of a bullet. We're all very familiar with feet per second. I'm not so much with meters per second, but for those you can do the conversion. But in feet per second, we're all very familiar with that, and we consider it as understanding that 3,000 feet per second is a normal, pretty quick bullet. 4,000 feet per second is a ridiculously quick bullet. 2,000 feet per second is a pretty slow for a high power rifle sort of bullet. So those are the normal speeds we sort of work with. But do we know what that is? That's just a bullet. We take that a little bit for granted, that sort of speed. Well, I'll run a quick equation up the side here, but what that's going to tell you is that we have a bullet speed of 3,000 feet per second is roughly 3,300 kilometers an hour. So it's a little bit over 2,000 miles an hour. So for those from my generation, I don't know about the modern world, if they get to go fast at all, but if you even come back down to doing 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour, and go and stick your arm out there and feel how much air you've got going on, that's fast. Imagine getting, I don't know if you've done it, people riding on motorbikes and things like that, just get hit with a bee or something like that on some bare flesh and feel what that feels like. So that's 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour. So if you times that by 10, so you just got to 1,000 feet per second, super slow, well 10, that bee's just about going to go through you. That's how fast we're actually talking about. So listen, that's just a quick segue to try and say that the speeds we're actually talking about at feet per second are a lot quicker than, because none of us get to travel that speed, probably hard to make that assessment, but it is a lot quicker than you might realise. So that's the speed thing. The next thing is the travel of the bullet, the actual flying through the air. Well, it doesn't fly, but it's traveling through the air. So what we do know is that the bullet slows down or starts slowing down the moment it leaves the barrel. So what all a bullet has is inertia. It gets the explosion to get it going, and then it has its inertia that goes through the air. It fights the friction of the air, which is what it slows it down. The other thing it slows it down, well, sort of does, if it's shooting up at all, then it's fighting gravity. So gravity is pulling it down all the time. So those are the features that are going on. Generally, if it's going to be shooting out at a long distance, then it has to have been shooting up for a little bit. If you've just shot dead flat, then it's probably only going to travel 100 to depending on what the caliber is, 100 to 500 meters before it hits the ground. So if you are talking about how far a bullet go, and we're talking 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles, and things like that, which yes, a bullet will travel those distances depending on the caliber and depending on the angle it's been shot up at. But what we're talking about there is the bullet is shot up, so to start off with, it's fighting friction of air and it's fighting gravity. And then we know that it goes from 3,000 feet per second to 2,000 feet per second to 1,000 feet per second. And then if we look at our calculations and things like that on our ballistic engines and our ballistic apps and that sort of stuff, or our tables, then we know that it goes down to 800, 700, 600, 500, that sort of stuff. It'll go down to really low numbers. And people consider that, okay, we're going to go down to 200 or 100 feet per second, I sort of heard mentioned. The simple thing I want to cut to is that's never going to happen. Okay, once a bullet starts to roll over, then there's something that's actually happening. That gravity is no longer resisting that bullet. That gravity is then pushing on that bullet and helping it go through the air. So when you're talking extreme long range and your bullet has gone up and it's starting to come over, then it's actually It's not just falling, it's had a run up to go into that slope where gravity's now helping it go to the Earth. Now keep in mind, out there, our ballistic calculations are starting to work into, they're just simply running with friction and that side of things, and they aren't particularly wrong, but they're starting to turn into forward motion, the forward travel of the bullet. When I say forward, I mean on the map, going from A to B, they're going forward. Of course, if your bullet's coming down on 30 degrees, then that part of its speed is forward, part of its speed is down. So the actual nose to tail speed of the bullet is going to be higher than what your ballistic app is telling you, because it's starting to not go as far forward on the map as it is going fast in its nose to tail. What I'm saying is, even if your ballistic app says it's only doing 500 feet per second, your bullet speed is probably up in the 800 feet per second, 700 to 800 feet per second. And that's the simple nature of understanding that a bullet falling by itself in a nose to tail free fall will from zero accelerate to over 500, 600 kilometers an hour. That's how fast it will fall by just its mass being pulled by gravity. So if it's got to run up into it, you know, who knows? I haven't seen the maths, haven't seen the equations on it, but it wouldn't shock me if they still manage to maintain the 800 to 1,000 feet per second. They certainly are not going to drop below the 600 or 700 feet per second. Putting that back into perspective, that is still 600 to 700 kilometers an hour. So, and that's the 300 to 400 miles an hour. So way faster than what the human flesh could deal with, or animal flesh could deal with something actually, a little hard metal thing whacking into you. So all that probably getting a little bit complicated. My real comment is to come back and verify the initial comment. If a bullet is still traveling through the air, you should still consider it lethal. Not effective, not practical to use out there, none of those things. This is much more about understanding your safe zone. This is much more understanding than if you're in a position where you're shooting over a crest. You know there's nothing behind there. There's no questions about it, because you can't switch it off into, oh, it'll have no energy when it gets out there anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yes, it'll have energy out there. It's using gravity to help it travel once it's starting to go down there, so yes, it's a concern. You want to know there's nothing there. You're shooting something in a tree. It's up in a tree, so you've got a decent angle up in a tree. Now listen, it is a thing that a lot of people do. I do it. The thing to consider is the bullet you're using, the energy it's got. I would generally only go with the low power stuff to do that sort of shot, because I want to make sure that bullet, if I stuff up and I miss, which you're really not allowed to if you're shooting a tree, I want to make sure there's a bit of tree behind it, so it's got something to go into. If you got follow through, you know that for the next 2 or 3 miles that everything is fine. That there's nothing, there's no one, there's nothing to damage, there's nothing you're concerned about, because yes, that bullet, especially once it started to roll over from up in the air there, it's got gravity helping it, so it is still potentially lethal. Anyway, listen, just a bit of a safety talk. It's a little bit also, I see a fair few comments of, oh, the bullet it'll just be like a fly swat out there, it's just going to have no energy, that sort of stuff. Yeah, listen, no, not the case at all. It's I get some people just poke it a bit of fun, that sort of stuff, but I would come back to the safety side of things. It is something to really consider. It is something to make sure of. It is still dangerous, so be safe on that side of things. Make sure you know what your backdrop is. Make sure you get a safe zone. And listen, I'll stop preaching. That's what I wanted to share with you today. Thanks for checking in on us. We'll catch you next time.